So good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar entitled GDPR and APPI Regulations in the Frame of the MSEC project, where we are going to discuss some of the regulatory challenges that our MSEC project is going through in order to implement its technology in the framework of smart cities. So as I said, this webinar is being held in the scope of the MSEC project, which we will present to you later on in our webinar. But this is an H2020 project. It's a joint undertaking between EU and Japanese partners, and it stands for Multi-Layered Security Technologies for Hyper-Connected Smart Cities. So I will now give the floor to my colleague, Mathieu Gallissot, that will now begin this very interesting topic on GDPR and APPI regulations in smart cities.
Thank you, Nadine, and welcome everybody. So let's start with the outline of the project, of this presentation, sorry. So we will start presenting you what are GDPR and what are APPI, its Japanese equivalent in terms of regulations. I will be presenting this with my colleague Takehiro from NTTDMC. Then Keiko Doguchi, our Japanese coordinator, will present you the MSEC project at glance. And at last, I will be presenting you some privacy by design technologies that we are implementing in MSEC in order to help use case implementation for smart cities. So to begin, I will start with a quick introduction about what is a personal data, because it's all what's privacy is about. A personal data is defined as a personal information that relates to identified or identifiable living individual. It can be different pieces of information which collected together can lead to the identification of a particular person, also constitute personal data. So it's this definition is important because it's not only identified data as we usually think, but it's also the potential of identification of an individual that is considered as personal data in the latest regulations. In scope, COVID-19 has been providing some application for tracking your relationships. So most of the time, you download an application which uses, for example, a Bluetooth channel to see to track your contacts. This is a quick example that has been promoted on some social networks that shows exactly how we can use this filter to identify you and steal personal data from you, which might be your potential illness regarding COVID-19. In this example, we show that there is a human resource department which wants to hire 3 persons, A, B, and C. The recruiter receive each people, and each time he's in front of somebody, he activates a smartphone with a tracing app. You just have to wait the quarantine time to see if any person he has been in contact for is ill or not. So in this example, we can see that this application, they can help you even though a MAC address might not be personal data. At the end, it is, because depending on the context, you can still identify a person and get a personal data from it, whether in this case it's illness or not. So let's start with the presentation of the regulation frameworks. and I will introduce you the General Data Protection Regulation, which is the European regulation for privacy. It came into force in May 2018, and its major change is to introduce the protection by default for personal data. Prior to this regulation, the protection was not mandatory. And now, since this regulation, you have to be proactive in the action of protecting data. And you have to show that you are protecting data and you do the necessary means to protect data. For example, it might be minimizing the processing of personal data, meaning that you will be collecting only the data you will need for your processing. Another mean can be to pseudonymize data, personal data, as soon as possible in your infrastructure to be sure that the identity related to the data is not unclear. You have to be transparent with your processing of data, so usually by informing the end user. And you have to in the scope of transparency, you also have to enable your end user to monitor your processing of data. So the end user must be able to ask you for the data relating to him, and also have some rights, for example, to modify data or to delete data. And then you also enable the controller to create and improve security feature. It's a continuous process, and this continuous process has to go on. The GDPR also defines some organizational duties and introduce some responsibilities. So for example, you will have a data privacy officer and also processes that must take place in each company. You have a few rights related to data that are defined. So for example, the right to erase personal data, the obligation to notify when you had a breach. And finally, what most people don't forget about GDPR, it's a fine. When you don't comply to this regulation, you can have a fine up to 4% of the worldwide fine annual revenue, and it's worldwide. So for international companies, it might have a huge impact. The major change in companies in the introduction of the data privacy officer. It's a person which duty is to verify that privacy is well handled in the company. Privacy in this scope concerns not only data which is processed outside the company, for example, for IoT devices, but also privacy regarding the internal processes of the company, such as the website, the human resources, and so on. And the regulation explains a few steps about these processes and how it must occur. So for example, there is a mandatory risk assessment when data is sensitive, and the data privacy officer is responsible of conducting this privacy impact assessment. And in the scope of GDPR, this slide shows you what are the data protection duties. So the right to access, the consent management, accountability of the firm processing data, the scope of minimizing the use of personal data as much as possible, the right to rectify for the end user, the right of erasure, and so on. So this regulation might be quite complex, but at the end, it's quite straightforward. And now I will give the floor to Takehiro in order to present the Japanese equivalent of the GDPR, which is the APPI. Takehiro, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mathieu. I'm from NTTDMC, Takehiro. I will present the APPI. APPI is an abbreviation of Act on the Protection of Personal Information in Japan. So, the first of all, scope and requirement. APPI was enacted in 2003 and amendment on 2020. Actual implementation of the amendment APPI will be in a few years. So these regulations organized from by Personal Information Protection Commission (PPC), the Japanese supervisory authority. The APPI only applies to persons or entities especially handle personal information in the course of their business. So APPI scope is wide and covered all of all of materials related to personal information. So I'd like to introduce the APP requirements to be handled on our project MSEC. So mainly three requirements exist. So first, personal information handling business operators shall specify the purpose of utilizing the personal information. And second, notify the person of the purpose of utilization. Of publicity announce the purpose of utilization. In cases where it can be recognized, judging from the acquisitional circumstances, that the utilization purpose is clear. We don't need to notify or announce, but basically we have to notify the person of the purpose. And last, personal information handling business operator shall take necessary and appropriate action for the security controls. So acquired personal information and some information which may be identified some person or some sensitive materials have to be preserved under the security, under moderate security control. And next, please. Mathieu, thank you. So to comply with three requirements on our project, I'd like to consider the concrete roles and definitions. So to comply security requirement, we have to consider organizational safety control measures. This is a topic, so we have to consider specified measures to comply with this topic. So, but that is now being developed, and specified measures and depends on the use cases. So each use cases use different information and which will be handled under different situations. So, but regarding these topics, we have to consider the specified measures. So human safety and physical safety and technical safety is also the same. And among our use cases, we have cross-border use cases. So in that, in the cross-border use cases, restriction on provision to a third party in foreign country exists. Based on adequacy decision between EU and Japan, prior agreement of provision to a third party in a foreign country isn't necessary. But this regulation is only applied to APPI in this situation. So, but on APPI, we don't have to consider more difficult situation under the third party in a foreign country restrictions. So next, please. This slide will clarify adequacy for both regulations. So EU and Japan has recognized their regulations provides equivalent level of protections, leading to adequacy decisions January 3rd, 2019. So this means mutual recognition will be done, has done. So basically, Japanese personal information API is not restricted rather than GDPR. So according to this mutual recognition, so on APPI, some of data and regulation will be handled under GDPR similarly. Sorry. And so according to this recognition on GDPR, also adequacy decision permits cross-border data transfer outside the EU or the transfer from or to a party outside the EU without further authorization from a national supervisory authority. Move on to next, please. Yes, so this table introduced the key aspects between two regulations, GDPR and APPI. So this table compiles 4 factors: purpose, scope, data controller, data processor. But basically, since we got mutual recognition, so both of two regulations has similar levels and concepts between two regulations. For example, scope applies to the processing of personal data wholly or partly by automated means, and to the processing other than by automated means within the scope of union law. This is a regulation article on GDPR, but also on APPI applies to the use of personal information for business. The APPI has very broad and open concept of data processing. This is on this scope. between both of the two regulations, same concept exists. So the other factor, purpose, data controller, data processor is also same. And the next, please. Yes. But to comply and get the mutual recognition between two regulations, some of laws are added on APPI to fill in the gap because APPI is not restricted rather than GDPR. So from GDPR aspect, APPI have to add some regulations to APPI. So those regulations are these 5 regulations below. First one, expanding the range of sensitive personal information. On APPI, Japanese regulations and organization and PPC added sexual life, sexual orientation, and information on trade unions to sensitive personal information. These factors didn't exist on APPI, but in order to fill in the gap, these factors added on APPI. The following is also added to fill in the gap. Next, please. Yes. So these rules exist only on GDPR. So doesn't exist on APPI because in order to comply with mutual recognition, these topics wasn't added on APPI, but so these factors exist as a gap between GDPR and APPI. But on our MSEC project, we don't use these categories. But if we use these categories, we have to consider. So first one is specific dispositions for children consent. So what's called children right, but this rights doesn't exist and doesn't exist and was not considered on APPI, but if we have to consider these topics on cross-border use cases, we have to consider specified measures to comply with these regulations. So the rest of the following regulations also, these regulations doesn't exist on APPI. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Takehiro. Now I will leave the floor to Keiko for the MSEC project presentation.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good. Thank you, Mathieu. Hi, everybody. I'm Keiko Doguchi from NTTE of Japan. I will introduce our project, MSEC. I think most of you already know this project, but I will introduce our project briefly. So it is international project. So this is a member of our project. We have those members from Spain, France, Greece, and Ireland on EU side, and members from Japanese side. We, NTT East, is a project coordinator on JP side, and Worldline in Spain is the project coordinator on EU side. So our members are private companies, universities, private research organizations, and national research organizations. Next slide, please. So there are some ways to divide layers for IoT related things. It's like, this is one example of the layer structure and also the specific breaches in each layer. First, application level, there are, we get code injection, buffer overflow, unauthorized permission or modification of service data, sensitive data. So for the data abstraction layer, replay attacks, account list attacks, and data accumulation layer, we get attacks to private data confidentiality and integrity. And then connectivity layer, we get hacking DOS, man in the middle interception, and physical devices, node failure, severe attack. So those, we have like 5 layers we specify for the security, and then we get all the, we get those like breaches in each layer. So I would say it is no exaggeration to say that our life will not be possible without IoT. So in order to live in our life with peace of mind, it is necessary to ensure those security of each layers. Next slide, please. Here are drivers for security enhancement. First, increased use of IoT. So research organization, it's called IDC, estimates that there will be 41.6 billion connected IoT devices or things, generating 79.4 zettabytes of data in 2025. As the number of connected IoT devices grows, the amount of data generated by these devices will increase. The second, high number of ransomware attacks. The rise in adoption of IoT has increased the potential of cyber attacks. Cyber criminals look for smart devices with poor security practices. It is estimated that over 30 million IoT attacks were done in 2018, an increase of 200% than that recorded in 2017. The third one is new regulations. Like we are talking about, like all the governments all over the world are trying to set the regulations regarding data security and privacy. Various regulations have been introduced to protect the security of IoT devices and various data, such as GDPR in Europe and APPI in Japan. And then lastly, technologies advancements. New emerging technologies such as blockchain, AI, machine learning, and so on will facilitate the development of new solutions focused on protecting end-to-end IoT applications. Next slide, please. So in those situations, here's our project's goal. Our main goal is to research, develop, deploy, and demonstrate multi-layered security technologies to ensure smart cities. We use many technologies in our everyday life, devices like smartphones and computer, PC, cloud computing, IoT, big data, and so on. So you cannot see visually, but there are many layers for those technologies. So we're trying to secure those each like layers, those devices and then technologies for our life. Please, the next slide, please. This is the architecture defined by MSEC project. As I mentioned at the beginning, in order to research how to secure for each layers and which assets and tools to utilize, we are discussing based on this architecture figure. I'm not a technical expert, so if you're interested in this technology stuff more, please see our deliverables that you can download on our website or participate in other webinars or contact us by email and so on. Next slide, please. So finally, this is the pilot, our pilot cities. One is Fujisawa City in Japan, and then the other one is Santander in Spain. As you can see in the picture, both cities are famous for beautiful beach, and many visitors are coming for sightseeing. We are trying to implement our research in those cities. Some implementations are already started, and thanks to the cooperation from those city officers, we are expecting a great result. So this is all my part. Thank you very much for listening. I will pass it back to Mathieu.
Thank you very much, Keiko, for this project overview. I will now explain the technologies that we have been developing in the MSEC project, not only the technologies, but also the approach to privacy we had in a more technological way. So first of all, let's have a round of questions just to understand privacy. I started this webinar with an example of COVID-19. Actually, the worldwide context is very great to talk about privacy regarding this. And I will show you a set of data, and we will use the poll function of this Zoom software tool to see what is your understanding of the classification of data. So let's start with this assertion. There is an information which is Mathieu Gallissot has COVID-19. Okay. And do you think it's an identified data, pseudonymous data, anonymous data? I will start the poll so you can vote given your understanding. I'll let you two minutes maybe for you to find the poll. I've got only one answer so far, two answers. Okay, three answers. I don't know if you have troubles to vote. Okay, we've got five answers. Okay, I will close it now. And now you can see the result. Three of you thought about it's a personal data, and yes, it is. So it's not either pseudonymous or anonymous, since there is my full name and the information that I'm sick. So we can move on with the next poll, which is next question. Okay, so now if I want to masquerade a bit, I can say the French guy speaking has COVID-19. So there is not my name anymore. Let's run the poll. To answer, 5 answer. Okay, let me share the result. So it's not a pseudonymous data. That was a little trick. It's a personal data. And why it's not a pseudonymous data? It's because when you register to this webinar, you add my identity. And if you remember the definition of a personal data is something which is either identified already, that was the first question, or identifiable. And this is this part. Now you can still identify me just by going on the EMSEC website and so on and see that I was actually the French guy speaking, so you can get back to my full name. And this is something to be careful about. The data, it's obvious whether you don't have yet the full name. If it's obvious and you can go back to the identity of a person, it's still a personal data. So let's go back to the next question. Let's say now I will hash the data. I will use a hash algorithm and I will masquerade my name and blah, 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 blah as COVID-19. So let's run the poll again. So now you should be able to vote. Okay, all right. So 6 of you thought it was anonymous data, and actually it is not. It's a pseudonymous data. We did not talk about that yet in this webinar, but the anonymization process of a data must be irreversible. And in case of a hash or when you encrypt the data, it's not irreversible. So technically, it means that you can still go back to my identity in somewhere or another. And this is a debate about also the MAC address of your devices. And these addresses are bound to your personal devices. And we consider this address as a pseudonymous data. And actually, a pseudonymous data must be processed like personal data with a few less points, but it's still personal data. When you encrypt a personal data, it remains a personal data. Encryption is not anonymization. So let's have the last question, and I think I started with this one. My apologies. I will rerun the poll for question 4. And this question will be: one participant in this webinar have COVID-19. I let you a few seconds to vote. Okay. Actually, this one is anonymized data because as I'm speaking now, we are 16 participants in this webinar. And we might know one is have COVID-19, but we don't have any way to find out who it is. So only now we can say that this data has been anonymized, because let's say if it was me, then you have 1 out of 16% chance to find out it's me, and we consider this as statistically enough for anonymization. So this was a way to introduce you what is our challenge now back to the MSEC project to handle privacy, because we have a lot of data in IoT projects, and some of them is personal data, some of them we don't really know, and some of them is not. And we have to find a technical way to handle this. We have defined a privacy strategy. So depending on the privacy obligations, so we have a quick presentation of this obligation in the first part of this webinar. Then we have different obligations, whether it's an identified data, a pseudonymous data, or an anonymous data. As you can quickly see, when it's an anonymous data, it's much easier to have an IoT device, because we have much less obligation to fulfill. In the case of identified data, this is the case where we have the most of obligation. So more process, more control, and basically much more cost handling this data. But at the end, in some cases, we don't have a choice, and we have to do so. And there is an intermediate, which is pseudonymous data, in which we can still have a few information, basic information, without calling it an identified data, and it really is a bit of obligation we have regarding this data. Our strategy was to, whenever it's possible, we anonymize the data. And then we incrementally, we try to have pseudonymous data, and if we don't have a choice, such as in one use case, for example, then we treat data in the identified way. Technically, our main approach for privacy, the first one is to use cyber security technologies to protect data. So it means having the way to control who's accessing the data, to have strong authentication, strong encryption, and to be at the top of the state of the art regarding cybersecurity around the infrastructure. And more in details, but you can find more in the previous webinars on deliverables. We have 3 points. The first one was to harden the device using integrity management and Mother Boot and Secure Boot. So in this way, we know that the device is hardly hackable. The second point was to harden the encryption and anonymization using also hardware technologies. So this way, brute forcing or hacking the device again is much more difficult. And finally, we have threat analysis and monitoring of device with an innovative approach based on IoT-only pods that can help us to understand the threats that happen on the web, and to, once we have identified those threats, to find the appropriate countermeasure to deploy on our device. So fish-free cyber technologies helps us on the device part to have a strong protection of data. But protection of data, it's not a single answer, since as we have seen, when we have personal data, the protection is not enough. And one of our partner, which is Keio University, have also developed non-anonymization technologies based on, it's called GDPR Anonymizer. And when you have a video stream, it simply removes personal information about this video stream. And you can get in contact with them to have more information and also to find more NV deliverables. It's a wonderful asset that we have. And finally, the MSAC architecture is based on blockchain to ensure also a strong security on the cloud and data part. But as some of technical person knows on its blockchain, have a way to the data that we put in the blockchain cannot be modified or erased anymore. So there is a conflict to use a blockchain with personal data. And again, we found a way with an off-chain mechanism to still be able to implement GDPR and privacy rights with a blockchain. At the end, in the MSAC architecture, we have an end-to-end approach, and it will be also the topic of an upcoming webinar, in which we have six main features, which are auditing, attestation, anonymization, authorization, accounting, and authentication. This is what I call the 6A. And this 6A, especially auditing, attestation, and anonymization, helps us really to promote privacy. I told you about the blockchain, and one thing about the blockchain, as you might know, is when you write a data in the blockchain, what we call the chain in the distributed ledger is that, and if this is the property we want, we cannot modify the data once it's written in the blockchain. We can, let's say, write a patch from the data that we want to modify, but we can still not delete the original data. And there was a great report, I put the cover on this slide, promoted by the European Parliament about the blockchain usage in general with the GDPR. And this report shows that there are several possibilities. One of them is homomorphism, which helps you to compute data while it's still encrypted. There are zero knowledge proof, when you have to prove something without revealing your identity. There is the off-chain storage. As I said earlier, this is the solution we chose. There are also pruning and the addition of noise in your process to masquerade personal data. The off-chain storage has been implemented by Worldline and has also been presented in a previous webinar. I invite you guys to find more details about this on our website. And I will end with a little example. It's how the MSAC platform, as we are designing it, can help us to fulfill one requirement. It's an example, we can fill other ones with an automatic branch notification mechanisms. So I simplified a lot this example with smart city IoT device on one part, the MSAC platform in the middle, and the end users that want to access data. What we do have in the project is a service, an auditing service, as I mentioned earlier. And this auditing service, actually, it is based on the Trusted Computing Group specification, using, for example, a Trusted Platform Module, a TPM, which has its offer the ability to audit remotely a device and to check it has not been compromised. So in our design, devices are audited on a regular basis. It's up to you. It can be every minute, it can be every hour, every day, and so on. On the other part, we also have accounting properties. So in this case, in this example, we have end users such as citizens that register to the MSEC platform using, for example, O2 or OpenID. So using the existing account on, with a bit of user federation, it can be a really easy enrollment to the MSEC platform. Now, let's say one device gets attacked, and in this case, the auditing fails. And when this auditing fails, the MSEC security management put the device on quarantine. It is notified that, for example, the firmware has been changed, the device has been opened, or whatever. So we can put this device in quarantine. So the rest of the platform can still work in a resilient way, but this device is put apart, letting time for the platform administrators to understand what's happened and eventually to correct or to definitively exclude the device. But in the meantime, with the property we have regarding the use of data, registration, and our architecture, we can know which users have been collecting data from this device between the time of detection and the time of when the audit failed. So we can automatically notify these users that the breach occurred. So this is one example of how we can implement GDPR and privacy with the MSEC platform. So this is the end of this presentation and webinar. Maybe you have questions, so I will give the floor to you. And I'd like to thank also Keiko and Takehiro for their participation. So if we don't have question, maybe we can close the webinar.
Okay, so thank you so much, Matthew. I'll give you 1 or 2 more minutes for questions. You can either raise your hand by using the raised hand function here in the webinar, or you can ask a question on the chat. So I can see that some of you are thanking for the interesting presentation. So thank you so much to our 3 speakers. Perhaps even if you do not have a question right now, you need to think a little bit more about all this information overload that you have received. We will send a follow-up email today to all registered participants. So this email will include the video recording, but also this PowerPoint presentation and some interesting links and information regarding this project and how our researchers are trying to overcome these regulatory challenges, but also the ones related with privacy and data security. We, like my colleagues told you, we had a set of previous webinars. They were more related with the several layers of this MSEC technology. And we will continue to have at least 2 more webinars, which will be mainly focused on the other layers that still remain to be presented to a larger audience, which are the application layer and the cross layer. So you should receive an invitation to join us. So if you are interested, please register when you receive this invitation. And I don't see any questions. So perhaps we can, in fact, close this webinar. So thank you so much to all our speakers, but also you who participated and showed interest in this topic. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.